off with just a quick introduction. There are some of you who already know who I am. I recognize some faces out there. If you're in the computer science department this summer, you know me because that's where I work. I'm in the computer science department. I'm a teaching professor, but that's not really why I'm here talking to you today. I'm here talking to you today primarily in my role as the program manager of the computer science RU program. So you've probably talked to program managers for the RU programs that you're coming from. I run the CSC RU program, and I talk to all the other programs and coordinate all of the events here over the summer along with Kayla. And the reason that we're here to talk to you today is because we are getting closer and closer to the end of this program. I believe we have 3 weeks left, looking at the calendar about. And on the second to last day, we are going to have a poster session where most or hopefully all of you will be presenting the work that you've been working on over the summer in the form of a poster presentation. And so we don't want to just throw you into the deep end. We're going to try and give you some background, give you some information about how to make a poster, how to make an effective poster, and also how to present that poster. We're going to talk about poster printing today because that's an important step, right? And then we'll also talk a little bit about the event itself. I'll talk to you about that towards the end of the day today. All right, but first, let's talk about things at a kind of a high level. We're here to talk about communication. Posters are a form of communication, and there are many things that can impact the effectiveness of communication. I'll start us off with a couple, and then see if maybe you can tell me some other things that might affect communication. One major thing that can affect communication is things like, maybe the most obvious one would be like the language that you're using, whether that be spoken or written, right? It's necessary for humans to understand that language in order to be able to get information from those words. Otherwise, you're just looking at something and you have no idea how to read it, no idea how to get the information out of it, or the words somebody talks to you and you have no idea what that human being is saying, right? Another example of something that impacts communication is cultural differences. So, in some in American culture, usually nodding your head means yes and shaking your head means no, but in other cultures it's the exact opposite. Shaking your head no means yes and nodding means no. So the culture can have an impact on communication. Fortunately for us here today, I don't think culture or language is going to impact the type of communication that we're talking about. Let's think about in terms of poster presentations. What are some things, put yourself at the poster session in a few weeks from now. What are some kinds of things that you think might impact your ability to effectively present your data? What are some things that you're worried about having to deal with at the poster session in terms of communication? Anybody have any ideas? Body language, yeah. So nonverbal communication can go a long way. If you are, it's honestly hard for me not to use body language when I'm communicating. I think most people do it without even thinking so much, right? But it can be certainly a giveaway in terms of to your own feelings or emotions. If you stammer, stutter a lot, it's going to make people seem like you're not as confident on that topic, maybe not as much of an expert on that topic as you purport to be. You seem nervous, right? Some nerves, of course, very understandable, but there's a limit between being a little shaky about presenting and seeming like you have no idea what you're talking about. We obviously don't want that to happen. What are some other things you might be worried about in terms of communication? Think about if you want to take a friend out and talk to them about something important. Where would you take them? Would you take them to a club? Why not? It's loud. It's loud. So your environment, the environment has a big impact about communication. And if you think about what you're going to be doing at the end of the summer, there's going to be a lot of people presenting at the same time. I can tell you from past experience, it's pretty crowded. There's a lot of people at this event. So that is actually something that you need to kind of mentally prepare yourself for. You might have to talk a little bit louder. You might have to talk over the person who's also presenting next to you, right? In order to get your point across, in order to be understood. And one other one that's maybe a little bit less obvious is your emotional state, right? Can affect how you communicate. This can be anywhere, very obvious. If I'm like extremely depressed, can't get out of bed, well, I'm going to be talking very slow, sad, right? Hopefully that's not something we need to worry about on the day of our presentation. For our purposes, we actually kind of want to keep emotion out of it as much as possible. We want to come across as professional. calm, cool, confident in what we're presenting, right? So, yes, real life is going on, and maybe you've got some important events happening that are stressing you out or making you happy or whatever the case may be. But in the terms of presenting our research, it's important to keep things professional, keep our personal feelings and emotions out of it as much as we possibly can. Okay, so let's try and start to apply this more directly towards the posters themselves. And let's first start talking about why we're using posters. Have any of you been to a conference before? Okay, so I'm assuming those people that raised your hand have seen a poster session before, or at least maybe passed by one briefly in the convention center, right? The other type of thing that you see at conferences would be not a poster session, but a talk, where maybe I have written a paper and I'm going to stand up and talk to my peers about it for usually 20-ish minutes or so, and maybe take some questions, right? So those are the two primary ways that we present information at these kinds of conferences. We're asking you to do a poster. So why a poster? What do you think is the difference between doing a poster presentation versus preparing like a 20-minute talk with slides that I'm going to get up and communicate to a whole group, maybe a room much like this one, right? A whole group of people. What's the difference? What's the difference in the way that things are being communicated, the message you're sending? Any ideas? Yeah.
Posters can happen over the course of like multiple days. People can still see it even if they can't go to the talk.
Yeah, so talks are usually scheduled. If you're there for the talk, you get to see it. If you're not there for the talk, you don't get to see it. Maybe it's recorded. I'm actually recording this talk. I record everything. It's so easy not to. So easy to do it. Why wouldn't you? But if you want to ask questions, especially, you have to be there. You have to be present for the talk. Posters, the poster sessions, now they don't make people stand there all day, right? That's a little extreme, but they last for a few hours, and they can talk to many people as they pass by your poster over the course of those few hours, right? What's the kind of the trade-off there in terms of, yes, it's true that there's a time component. That makes posters feel maybe a bit more casual, right? A little bit more informal. Whereas the presentations, 20-minute talks, are a bit more formal. They're going to follow, the paper pretty closely. But both actually serve the same goal, which is to make other people aware of what it is that you are doing. So all communication at conferences is to take this cool thing that we discovered or found out about or learned or been working on and tell other people about it. So the poster is great for casual connections, more casual connections that we're going to use to open up an opportunity for discussion. So really focusing on drawing people's eyes, getting their attention, and then having a conversation with those people. Maybe those people are working on a similar project at their institution, and you can find ways to collaborate. Maybe they're working on a totally different project, but one that could interface well with your project, and you should find a way to collaborate. Or maybe they just think your research is really cool and they want to support you in whatever way they can, even if they're not directly related in that particular field, right? All are good reasons to stop and have a conversation. Poster presentations, if somebody is sitting in that room, they have to listen to me talk. You all are captive, right? You have to listen to me. You can get it from me, of course, right? But you're not going to listen to somebody else. Whereas with a poster, it's a conversation. I can exit that conversation, go have another conversation with somebody else in that same room at that same time. So it's a lot more casual, a lot more formal, a lot more flexibility in terms of how you can get that information across. So really, what is the best way to get people's attention, I think, is the most important thing to think about when creating a poster. So here are some tips. Let's get into the detailed part. How do we make a poster that is effective? How do I make a poster that accomplishes our goal of catching people's attention and making them want to come over and talk to me and have a conversation so we can network, so we can work together, so we can talk about all the cool work we've been doing. The three things that we want to keep in mind. A poster has to be focused. And really, what that means is pretty simple. It should be about the thing, and anything that is not about the thing, get it out of there. So that can be, on its face, a simple thing, but somewhat challenging in practice because I've talked to many students who work on many projects, and at the end of the summer, students can say a lot about the things that they're working on. But not all of it needs to go on the poster, right? So deciding what makes the cut and what doesn't make the cut is one of the hardest parts about making a poster. You can always write more. I find that it's usually not a hard thing for students to come up with more text, more information to put on a poster. The hard part is I only have a limited amount of space. So how do I decide which of that content is going to make the cut, make it onto the poster, which one am I just going to have to, allow people to talk to me about? The other thing that we want it to be graphic. If I see a wall of text, that's a turn off to me, to be quite honest, right? I want graphics, I want visuals, for a couple of reasons. One, it's an attention grabber. It's an attention grabber, so visuals are going to catch people's eyes a lot more than a wall of text will. The other thing is for understanding results. It can be, one thing to explain the results using a paragraph of text, but if I have a graph, if I have actual data that I've collected and can show, here's the relationship between X and Y, that's going to be a much more powerful thing for somebody who's walking by to see than a bunch of text that they're not even going to have time to read in the 10 seconds that they're walking past your poster. So we really want it to be graphic. We really want it to be eye-catching. And then there has to be an order. There has to be a flow. We're not just throwing random things at the board. We're going to start with, here's the problem set up, here's the introduction, here's the background, why we're doing this, our motivations, right? Here is the setup for the experiment that we are laying out. Here's all the stuff that we did, here's the data that we collected, and here's all of our pretty results and what they mean, right? Because that's actually ultimately what people are going to care about. What did you actually learn? How you got there is important, yes, but what did you actually learn is going to be the one thing, right? The one thing that most people are going to remember about your poster, about your conversation. So that really needs to have a prominent place in your poster. A lot of what I'm talking about on this slide, and actually most of the following slides, comes from this link, which I would encourage you to take a picture and visit later. I'll also send out, I'm going to send out the recording of this. I'm going to send out the slides, so you'll get all this information later, probably tomorrow or the next day as well. But yeah, let's keep going on to the next one. So yeah, this is what we want our poster to do. We want it to be an advertisement. We want it to be a conversation starter. We want it to grab people's attention and make them come over and want to talk to us. That is really, I think, the number one important thing that we want our poster to do. Here are some very easy tips to avoid. It's easy for me to say. It's one of those things that it's easy for me to tell you to do these things, but can be kind of harder in practice to follow through with these things. The small text one is a really tough one for the reasons that I've already kind of mentioned. People want to say as much as they can, but the more stuff you type, the smaller the words have to be to fit everything on, and that's just bad. One general rule of thumb, I think it's probably even on this slide, maybe in the next slide or two, is every single thing on your poster should be readable from 4 feet away. Think about why that is the case. Think about where you're going to be and who you're presenting to. You're going to be in a big hall. A bunch of other posters, and me and a whole bunch of other people are going to be walking, and I'm going to see your poster, right? And it's got to catch my eye in that 10 seconds. I have to be able to see something on that poster that catches my eye and makes me want to come over and talk to you in just that short window of time. So if your text is super tiny, your graphics are super tiny, and you cram 100 different things on there, I'm going to be like, whoa, that's way too much. I'm overwhelmed by that one. I'm out of here, right? I want that one big headline, that one big grab that you have figured out, and I want that to be very prominent, so I want to come over and talk to you more about that thing. All right. Use graphics as much as possible. This is so hard, but one that I think I commonly push people to do more is try to use as less text as you possibly can. I know that it seems like you have all this poster real estate and you want to fill it up. And it's true, you don't want to leave big gaps. That's not necessarily a good thing either. But the opposite is also a problem, where you've got too much text, where things are too dense. Graphics really help with that. So anything that you can display visually is going to be a benefit here. A lot of this kind of harkens back to good user interface design. So things that you've seen on websites, right? Clean lines, clean columns. Anytime you go to a website where the text is jumbled all over the place, it feels confusing to read, hard to follow. So we want to keep those kinds of things in mind with our posters as well. We're going to guide our viewer. We're actually going to use the structure of the poster. And I'll have some visual examples of posters here in just a minute to help guide our viewer from the beginning to the end of the poster in a logical and organized way. And yeah, here's that tip I promised was going to pop up on a future slide. Everything should be readable from 4 feet away, which is a pretty easy thing to test once you have your physical poster in hand. Did any of you do one of these back in the day? These science fair posters? My daughter is in 2nd grade this fall, but she did have her first science fair for 1st grade last year and put her poster together on roly-polies. It was adorable. She wanted to catch roly-polies out in the front yard and take them to the poster. I told her that we maybe didn't need to go that far. Yeah, these are great. These are not what we're going for, right? These are actually sort of the opposite of what we're going for. We don't want to just have disparate globs of stuff on a board. We want to have it flow. We want to have it flow from a beginning to a middle to an end. So let's take a look at these posters. I actually have an example of 3 posters coming up. These are actual posters that have been presented at past poster sessions for each one. I'm going to give you a minute or 2 to kind of look at it. You can talk to your neighbors and stuff. And I'm going to ask you some questions. You know, what's good about this? What do you like about it? But actually, I think, you know, perhaps more important is what can be changed? What can be improved? What can be made better? So let's start. Let's go ahead and start with the poster. Here's our first one. I know that you all probably can't read this text from where you are, so that one's a little bit hard to judge, but let's try and judge the rest of it, including the flow, the structure. You know, does it have a good flow? Is it visual? I'm going to shut my mouth for a minute or 2, what you think about it. Let me start with hopefully an easy question. What first grabbed your attention on this poster? When I first put this slide up on the screen, what did your eyes first gravitate towards? The big old picture of a manatee, right? Who doesn't love that? Who doesn't love that big old picture? That's wonderful. That's a great example of how something as simple as a picture of a manatee that's obviously related to our research can immediately get somebody's attention. Oh, there's a manatee. I wonder what they're doing with manatees. And then actually, I hope the second thing that your eyes are drawn to is that big, bold title, right? Will manatees still exist in 2100? God, I hope so. But regardless of what the answer to that question is, boom, that's got your attention, right? You are not in any doubt about what this poster is about. It's about the survivability of manatees for the next 75 years. That is what this work is about. So in just 2 quick seconds, you see this poster, immediately know what it's about. Is there anything that you don't like about this poster that you might critique about it, that you might want to try and improve a little bit? Do you have any suggestions? I actually like this one. So the fact that there are kind of quiet, you know, not many critiques, I think is not unreasonable. I do think the text is a little bit small. I think that especially over here it gets to be a little bit more wall of text-like. Notice how much white space there is. You might be looking at this and thinking, well, if I make these margins smaller, I could fit a lot more text in there. Don't. Keep some white space. It helps visually break things up. Also notice the flow. We start at the top left, and we work our way down the column, and we move to the second column, and then we move to the third column. This 3-column style is pretty standard. And there's a reason, right? Like, as human beings, we just kind of naturally gravitate towards, you know, top left to bottom, and then just repeat. like reading a website, or something like that. Lots of graphics. That's another thing that I often point out. Notice how each of these, everything in this column has a graphic to go with it. Every single block of text has a graphic to go with it. That's great. That's wonderful. The more graphics you can include. Now this graphic, I would argue, is maybe not helping so much because I like linear algebra. But even I look at this and I'm like, I'm not going to spend the time to figure out what that means right now. I just want to take a few minutes to talk about manatees. So that might be one critique that I have where, yeah, is this math important to your research? Absolutely. Not going to discount that at all. But is your average person going to care about the matrix? Maybe not. And if they do, you can give them your email address and send it to them, right? Like that's kind of the goal, is to make those connections so that further details can be exchanged with people who are interested. Let's take a look at another one. I'm going to do the same thing. Give you a couple minutes to look this over. Think about what you like. Think about what you might want to change. I'll ask you for some suggestions. What do we like about this one? What are some good things about this one? Does it have that same poll? Can you tell what it's about? Does it make you want to talk to the person about this particular topic? I think the title's good. Automated bottle cap removal machine. The one critique that I might have about that is you can see the text, the bigger text actually is not the main thrust. The bigger text is a nice clever title, but it doesn't actually tell me what it's about. I really would suggest maybe trying to reverse that somehow. Your main point, your main conclusion should be the easiest to identify thing on the whole poster. Period. That's what's going to draw people in. You see the three columns again? It does kind of follow a similar flow. How are we feeling about the use of graphics on this one? See some people saying so-so? Anyone care to elaborate on that? Yeah.
I like the problem decomposition part.
Mm-hmm.
That's explaining the problem pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Our solution part, I feel like it almost looks like this poster is supposed to like be a background for the actual physical object that you're displaying.
Mm.
And that's not supposed to be all of the info that you're supposed to have, because it looks like you're supposed to see this physical thing a lot better.
Yeah, I do agree that this isn't really doing a great job of conveying what the actual machine looks like. I do think having some display of what the machine looks like is useful, though. Your point might be correct. I wasn't at this actual presentation. Did they have a physical thing, sitting next to the poster? Maybe. Certainly wouldn't be unheard of for them to do something like that. I don't know if that's the case or not. I actually have a bigger problem with these up here. They look flashy, right, in a sense. But what is that lighting bulb adding to this poster that 180 watts of electrical power isn't already telling me? It's just taking up space. It's just taking up space. I would argue it is not contributing to the information, transfer of information really at all. The text is doing that just fine. It's also, in my opinion, not really serving to grab the user that much because, yeah, those icons, my eye is drawn to them. But I don't really know what those performance metrics really mean without taking the time to stop and talk about it and read the poster fully. So it's just not quite enough to draw me in. I think there are some really good things about this design. Again, you can see the clearly blocked off, the amount of white space. Again, I'd just like to point out how much space there is between sections. Please don't try to cram everything in. Please don't try to make it look like a wall of text. It's a pretty big turnoff. But yeah, some good things, some things that maybe could be improved. This is the last one that I have for us to kind of critique. It's a little bit different than the previous ones. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, wait, is this for the positive or negative advice?
Either. What do you got for me?
Oh, I feel like overall the gears are very cramped. I feel like they should be given a lot more space.
These are way too tiny.
Yeah.
I can tell you, even on my laptop, I can't read the text on these figures. It's way too small. They did not give nearly enough space to those figures. I agree with you 100%. Anybody else have any positive or negative? Yeah.
Me personally, I think the title's too long. I didn't agree with that.
Title's way too long. Yeah, I am not a environmental medicine person, so I'm not going to pretend like I understand necessarily what the title is. But it's definitely not making me want to learn more. It does not have that attention grabbing power. Should we also talk about I think the more obvious change between this one and the other one? It's vertical as opposed to horizontal, like the previous two examples. Do not do this. Do not make your poster taller than it is wide. There's a very simple reason for that. As human beings, we see things in widescreen. We do not see things like this, right? Our vision is like this. So it's more appealing to the human eye, more engaging to your potential interested parties if you fit your information horizontally as opposed to vertically like this. So please, 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 please do not section this into 2 tall vertical columns. Definitely better to go with the 3 shorter vertical column route if that's what you, with the horizontal route, yeah. Any other comments about this one before we switch gears a little bit? This is sort of intended to be the example of what not to do. This one's got some pretty serious problems. The graphics need to be a lot more front and center. The columns are off, and also the amount of white space is significantly less than the prior two as well. I can't underemphasize enough how much having that space really helps in terms of your design. Cool. So a few years back, there was a pretty radical design proposed for posters, basically saying that we've been doing posters all wrong. Actually, while I'm holding this up as an example of what you shouldn't do, I can also tell you that there are so many posters in the world that follow similar kinds of rules as this one. You could actually probably go find some in the hallways posted up outside, right? In the departments where you're from. You're going to see some posters that don't always follow good design rules. Not everybody is aware of the good design rules or even cares about what those are. So you'll definitely see some ugly, quote, posters if you really want to. But a few years back, some people who care a lot about UI and care a lot about that transfer of information from one person to another proposed a radical new idea for posters. It looks much different than the way that posters are typically seen. They say there should be a big old blank space right in the middle of your poster, and your main finding should go right there in the middle. It might seem like this is all wasted space, right? This is all just big blank space. Compare how much data is on here versus any of the 3 that we looked at prior to this. You can see that the actual data, the actual information about the experiment that was set up and the graphs showing the results has been relegated to the sides. Right? The center, or the center is taken up by the main point. But consider what the poster is for. If you don't get people to stop and talk to you about your poster, it's not doing its job. This design is geared entirely around that idea. I want people to stop and talk to me. And, if they stop and talk to me, then I'll show them all this stuff, right? This is my conversation over here and over here. This is my conversation. This is what gets people to stop and have that conversation with me in the first place. So it's an interesting it's an interesting scenario. This idea has been presented, and I have not seen anybody who has negative things to necessarily say about this. But I've also been to plenty of conferences, and I have yet to see any posters take the leap and try and do it this way. Why? Yeah.
I think about posters as something that you should be able to leave out places and people will continuously be able to contact you if you left it up somewhere. And this is basically only for that conference because there's not enough information on it to
Well, I mean, this is a watered-down version, but it does have the author's info up at the top if somebody really wanted to reach out and contact you. I guess you bring up an interesting point though. Once the conference is over and you take the poster home and you hang it up out in the hallway, how much use does the poster still get? I actually don't know how much people are still getting contacted about their posters, after they've been hanging out in the hallway for 5 years. I don't know. Maybe that is still doing its job. Maybe it still is advertising. The primary goal is the conference. So if you're saying this only works for that conference, well, to me, I don't care. That's my goal, is to make it work for this conference. So I think nobody wants to stand out. Nobody wants to be that one person that's different than everybody else. The traditional poster format, which is this is pretty traditional poster format, has such a stranglehold. Humans don't like to change unless there's really, really good reasons to. And so far, I don't want to say nobody. I bet somebody out there has probably fiddled with this idea a little bit, but not at the conferences I've been to. It still has not really kind of taken hold. So, but something I just kind of wanted to throw out there. This is an ongoing, area that we're talking about as academics, especially people who are interested in user design, user interfacing things. This is right up their alley, right? But let's get down to some details about what you're going to be doing for your posters and some more concrete steps, what you're going to need to do next. I'm assuming that you all have an idea of what your project is and what your results are and the experiment setup and all that stuff. So a lot of this stuff I don't think is hard to write, but the order does matter. So we do want to set up the problem first, walk your readers through step by step, and then this is where the majority, I believe, of the time of creating your poster should take place. Usually the writing part is not the hard part. The hard part is laying everything out in a way that's visually appealing. Get second opinions. If it looks good to you, great. Show it to somebody else. See if it looks good to them. Always good to have as many eyes on it as possible. That's what lab mates are for. Ask your lab mates for their prior posters because you don't necessarily need to start over from scratch, right? You can take a poster that somebody's already presented and had an effective job with, and then try and sub your data into that and move things around that way. In fact, that's, I think, strongly what I would recommend for all of you to do is go back to your labs and talk to the graduate students in your lab or the PIs of your lab and say, hey, do you have a poster template that I can use to get started? I would be very surprised if they did not have a poster template that you can use to help you get started. The 3 columns, the widescreen 3-column format is pretty much standard. So if you want to deviate from that, you better have a good reason to do it. I don't want to say you shouldn't, but I would expect 99% of the posters that you see at the poster session to be that widescreen 3-column format. So you can just kind of start out with that layout, take it as far as it can, and if your data really doesn't fit well that way, you want to move down to 2 columns maybe, or a 4th column is not unheard of. That's a decision you can make, but for the vast majority of things, that 3-column base format is going to be the trick. And let's talk about formatting. When I say no paragraphs, that means don't waste space on indentations, right? That's a waste of space. You don't need to indent paragraphs. We are trying to get as much info on there as possible. We want to keep our paragraphs short. We don't want walls of text. So you can see the guideline between 50 and 75 words. Honestly, 75 is already kind of pushing it in terms of blocks of text. Bullet points. We want to keep to, bullet points are not meant to be long. If you're writing really long bullet points, that kind of defeats the purpose. They should be little quick hits. So, and another thing that you can look at too, I know I talk about white space a lot. It's not the most exciting thing, but the amount of space between the bullet and where the text starts, right? You can adjust that as well to either get yourself a little bit more room to write or make it a little bit more visually appealing to the user. So play around with that too, as well as the amount of space around the paragraphs in general to make sure you get that nice design, that nice layout. Here are some guidelines for text fonts that you might want to use. These are not meant to be definitive. There is no substitute for writing it out and looking at it and using your own 2 eyes to see if it makes sense, if it's reasonable, if it looks good. So just because I'm saying that your caption should be 18 to 24, Well, try it. Make sure it actually looks good in practice. Make sure you can actually read it from a good distance away. And color, be careful with color. I know dark mode is all the rage, but you don't want your posters to be dark mode. And by that I mean black background with white text. Like no. No good. Also would kill our ink budget like crazy. So definitely want to have white background with black text on it. You usually don't want to use color on the words at all. If you really need to emphasize text, that's what bold is for, that's what italics is for. Colors can be useful, but you always have to balance that out with, too much of anything can be overwhelming. So a few core colors is good. Throwing the whole rainbow on there, unless you have if you're studying rainbows, then okay. But, unless you have a good reason to, maybe just pick a couple core colors and stick with that so that people aren't too overwhelmed. And then, we've already kind of talked about this. You're not going to convince anybody to start from any place other than the top left corner, usually. So that's where yours should start as well. Let's talk about graphs. Since this is such an important part of any poster, if your poster doesn't have any data visualization on it at all, I'd be a little concerned, to be honest with you. The one case where I could see that being a reasonable thing is if it's a work in progress, which does happen, right? I'm not done with this yet. I'm just giving you a progress report. I don't have a whole lot of data that I can put in a fancy graph. That happens all the time. But I'm hoping that you will have some data you can visualize and put on a graph. Maybe that's tricky for your project. I know data visualization is its whole is a whole other area of things that we can talk about. But some quick tips as you're putting your graphs together. Don't worry about things like, well, actually, I think this is an important point. I'd say even if it's not complicated, if you could show the relationship as a graph, do it. And contrast that to what you would be doing otherwise, which is writing it out in text. If it's especially complicated, then you definitely want to use a graph, because you're going to take up more text space writing out that complicated relationship than a graph would. But even a simple relationship, if it's core to your findings, should be presented visually if possible. And when you do so, avoid putting extra junk on your charts. So the gray background with the grid lines, that's no good. Marking every single data point, not necessary in this context, right? Some of these rules are different than what you might expect to see if you were preparing a paper for publication, right? But that's a different form of communication than what we're doing here. Our goal is to convey this relationship as effectively as possible, as quickly as possible. Nobody's going to stop and look at every single one of these data points. They don't have the time. If they really want to talk to you about that, you can say, hey, I'll email you my data set later, and you can go through it if you want to, right? So this really needs to be as presentation ready as possible. Keep the junk off of it. Keep all the junk off there. And don't use legends. Just label the data directly next to the lines themselves. All right. Our next step is to talk about how to actually create this poster in terms of getting it printed and getting it ready for poster day. So you're going to need to do this in PowerPoint. Posters are made in PowerPoint. I already mentioned this. Talk to somebody in your lab. They probably already have a template. But regardless of what you're using, make sure that your poster size is set up to be 36 by 48 inches, where the 48 inches, again, is the width, the long way. If you have a template, then you shouldn't have to worry about this so much. Your PIs will likely want to go through your poster with you before it gets submitted to the printer. And if they don't mention it, I would ask them. I would say, hey, please go over my poster before I submit to the printer. They should absolutely do that for you. The grad students in your labs, your bench mentors should also be willing to help you out with this stuff. And then when it comes to the big day. So our poster presentation is a little bit different in the sense that we have all of the McKelvey schools presenting, right? So I'm in computer science, and I know my computer science folks will be presenting there. And I'm ready to ask them lots of cool questions about their research. But if you're in the BME program or the MECI program, I'm still interested in what you're doing, but I'm not going to be able to ask as informed questions because I'm not a MECI, right? I'm not a BME. Some of the stuff you may have to explain to me a little bit more before I get it. And so that's actually, I think, one of the trickier things about the poster session that you all are doing. Some of the people there, your colleagues that are in the program with you and the PIs that are in the department you're working in, are going to know your work pretty darn well and be able to ask you some really good questions about it. And other people who aren't in your department are going to have very little idea about what it is that you're working on. And you kind of need to be prepared for both, although consider too that while I'm interested in your research, I'm also probably not super likely to collaborate with you because I'm not in your field. So with that in mind, it's more important for you to be prepared for people who are within your field than those who aren't. So yeah, keep that in mind. Keep the audience in mind. A lot of your audience is right here in this room. You all are going to be going around and talking to each other about your posters as well, but the PIs will be there, program directors will be there, et cetera, et cetera. Offer to answer questions. You're really trying to get a conversation going. I'd say the ultimate goal of any poster session conversation is to get that person's contact information and hopefully work together on projects in the future if you think they would actually be a good fit for that. If you don't, then just be nice and brag about your work and go on their way. But ultimately, we want to offer to ask people questions, and you don't want to spend too much time talking to everybody. There are going to be dozens, if not hundreds of people, maybe not hundreds, maybe 800 people at the poster events coming up. And if if it takes you 15 minutes to get through your poster, you're only going to be able to talk to like 3 people. So that's not very many. You definitely want to keep it short. Before you come to the session, you should have, a few bullet points that you're prepared to talk about. Just already prepped and ready to go. But you also don't want to talk somebody's ear off. Give them the quick hits, and then after you talk to them for a few minutes, be like, hey, if you want to learn more, let's exchange contact info and chat over email or something like that. And then get them on the way so you can hook somebody else in, talk to them about it. That should be the goal. And then we don't want to be too formal. So if it sounds like you're giving a lecture, that's going to turn people off. Lectures are appropriate. I'm giving you a lecture right now, right? Lectures are appropriate in certain times and spaces. Poster session is not where people want to go to get a lecture. They want to keep it conversational. They want to keep it light. So, you don't want to dump a book on them. That'll turn them off. But give them the quick hits. Keep it light and get their contact info so you can talk to them more about the details after the poster session's over. All right. The poster session itself is scheduled for Thursday, July 31st, which is the second to last day of the program. The time, it'll be in the afternoon in the Whitaker Atrium. The way that it's typically worked in past semesters, we haven't actually finalized this, so this part could possibly change, but the way that it has worked in past summers is half of you will present for the first hour, while the other half of you go around and actually are going to be judging. So you'll be assigned a few different posters that you'll have to judge on various criteria. That'll all be given to you on the day of. And then we switch. The people who were judging the first half are now the presenters, and the people who were presenting during the first half are now the judges. So there'll be 2 sessions, I believe, back to back of presenting and judging. And then once that's over, we actually have an award ceremony. Typically the dean comes and presents the awards. There are actually prizes involved. You will, we try and treat this just like a serious poster session. Serious poster session would be treated at any other conference. So it says here we strongly encourage all of you to participate. I know, at least from my program, some of you are required to participate as part of the participation criteria for your program. So I try to make that clear to my participants. If you have questions about that, talk to your program director. I can only answer for CSE people. But if you're unsure if you have to participate or not, talk to your program director. They should be able to tell you for sure. And we're going to talk about submitting poster for printing. But this is the Monday before. So by July 28th, your poster really should be done and about ready to go. Because we need a few days to get them all printed and get everything ready and set up for the poster session itself. So let's talk about printing your poster. You've got the next couple of weeks or so to work on it and get some feedback from your lab and your PIs and people you're working with. Once you're ready to submit it, there's a link, if I can, there we go. There's a link to submit your poster. Again, I will send this out, and your program directors will also send you this link, so don't worry about it if you don't get this link right this second. It will be emailed to you, I promise. But I did want to show it to you real quick, if I can pull up my, here it is, yeah. So this is the form that you're going to need to fill out when you are ready to submit your poster to be printed. Some of this stuff is very self-explanatory. Your name and email address should obviously be explanatory. When do you need this by? Well, I don't know why it looks a little weird right now, but we need it by the 31st of July is the day that we're trying to get this by. So that's the date that should be in the box. For the name of your primary investigator, you can put your PI in the box, but you can also put your program director here. So for example, if you're, do they want program director?
Yeah, so you should all be in the Teams group by now. I've posted instructions from the person who does the poster printing at IT.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it links this page. And
Perfect.
there's like specific details for each
Awesome,
of the areas.
awesome.
Because for that one, they do want the
Program director?
name of the program.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So if you're in the CSE program, it would be my name that goes here. If you're in the BME one, it would be Dr. Witter, I believe, who's running that program. So whoever's sending you the reminder emails basically is the person whose name should go here. And then your department, they actually want you to click other and put summer research programs or something like that, I believe, in the box. The really important one, at least as far as, well, the purpose is for the poster palooza session. The really important one, at least as far as the engineering school cares about, is this one, the cost center. It does cost money to print posters, but that will be covered by the program that you are participating in. You will get a number from your program director that will be emailed to you. I have not sent this out yet to my students, so if you're a CSE student sitting here like, I don't have this number, that's because I haven't sent it out to you yet. I don't know if the other program directors have sent this out yet or not. You don't need it for another week or two anyway, so no big deal if you don't have it yet. But this number is not something you should just make up. This is a very critical piece of info that will be sent to you to be used in this box to make sure that the programs are paying for the printing. You don't have to pay for it or anything like that. So if you don't know what goes here, just sit tight. You'll get that information soon. You don't need to complete the funding work tag at all. And the poster size, as I believe I've already mentioned, should be 36 by 48 inches. And then finally you attach your PDF down here to be printed out. I don't expect you to remember all of this. That's why Kayla wrote it down for you on Teams, and that's why I'm recording this right now so that you can come back and watch this again later. When it comes time to submit your poster, just kind of wanted to especially point out this one, since this is the one that can kind of trip people up, the cost center information that will be sent to you soon if it hasn't been sent to you already. I think that's it. I think that is all that I had, but yeah, I'd be happy to, we got 10 minutes left before my time is up, so if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them. Y'all feel like you kind of know what's going on? Cool. Yeah, I'd say, you know, sometime today, or if not today, then maybe tomorrow, later on this week, go back, ask your bench mentors, your lab mates for a template for your poster, and then you can get started. And if you have any questions, please talk to your program directors. I will send all this information out, but your program director is still probably the best person to talk to if you have questions about this stuff. Thanks for coming out, everybody, and come grab more stacks. Thanks.